Whoa, good morning, everybody. This morning, let me share with you some of my recent journeys here. You know, I left on August 8th to Belarus, the former Soviet Union. That's like my 34th time to Belarus, over the last... Well, actually, I went there the first time in 94, so that's about 23 years, but doing humanitarian aid for about 20 of that. Then I went to Kosovo from Belarus, left Belarus on the 18th of August, Kosovo for about a week, then to London, family camp for a few days with Alan Marshall. Then I was only home for about 9 hours. Sue picked me up at the airport in Detroit, and I went almost right to bed, got up at 4 in the morning. We headed for Grand Rapids Airport for the Montana family camp and got back, around midnight, I guess, on Wednesday morning. So, I think I'm just over all my jet lag. But, I'll update you on what's happening. I said I've been to Belarus 34 times. 15, 16 times, probably Kosovo. Those aren't vacations. Some places are really rough. You've heard those stories too. Third world countries, whether it's Africa, Vietnam, Myanmar especially is one of my nemesis. I just can't get through that place, man, without getting sick somehow, it seems like. But, Jesus said there'll be wars and rumors of wars, pestilence, earthquakes, various places. Jesus said, this ain't the end. He said, this is the beginning of sorrows. And that's the way it's been. Right now, if you've been around a TV set at all, this storm thing, all these hurricanes rolling up out of the Caribbean over there, south is now, Florida is really getting hit. A lot of preparation. They talk about these storms, this one big as ever. There's a lot of scared people down there, and people respond in different ways. Obviously, some think they're going to ride this out. Then they get a change of heart. Now they can't figure out how to get out. The devastation is probably going to be very, very, very bad. This world is totally unstable. Always has been, too, by the way. That's not some new thing. There was, mudslides in Sri Lanka. There's this crazy guy in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, that wants to nuke us. And, wars and rumors of wars, terrorism and starvation, and just like Jesus said it would be. Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation. He said, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. God does not change this world. This world is broken. It's going to remain that way, and in many ways get worse. He changes the people. That's what the gospel is all about. God don't change the world, he changes the people, changes us, his people. If they want to. If they don't want to, you can draw a lot of parallels out of these disasters. It's one thing to have an earthquake occur and buildings fall down on top of people, or mudslides, and now they got to go find all these missing people. That happens boom, right now it's done. These hurricanes, man, you can watch them come for days. Days. They're talking about sustained winds, 150, 175 miles an hour. It's not like they ain't never been a hurricane before. And everyone's preparing, the government's preparing, telling people, get out, while people sit there and ignore it. What else do people listen to all the time and ignore? Ignore. The Lord said, I'm going to come back as a thief in the night. When they least expect it, boom. I didn't hit it, Michael. He said, Gramps, you always scare me when you, boom, hit the old pulpit there. People ignore it, even mock it, even make a joke about it, even have hurricane parties. I've heard people say, maybe you've heard people say, well, when I die, I'm going to go to hell because that's where all my friends are going to be. I had a guy say that one time when I was in the elevator at the Federal Center with a bunch of people, and I thought, this is too confined for me. I got to get out of there. I don't want to be in an elevator with a person like that. Just mocking. Any of you have ever been in a hurricane? And I've been in, they call them typhoons in Asia, but it's the same thing. And I've been in them babies, and I'll tell you what, power like that, you feel about that big. You are the smallest, you're a speck. When you are in the presence of power like that, I've been on Navy ships that they turn right into those big storms because that's the only way they can ride them out. You don't want them ships in no port. You get them out to sea and take them storms head on. And I'll tell you what, that's an experience to be riding over 30-foot waves, especially on a flat bottom LST. When them waves lift it up, go underneath it, and then drop it. Wham! And the whole ship is shaking, man. They secure all the mess decks. There ain't no food going to be served. Who wants to eat it anyway? Those big ships are nothing, but they have to face those things head on. We need to be an old ship. Zion is what we need to be on, to be secure. This world is in bad shape. Now, when I started this thing about 20 years ago, we took the model from the scripture, the humanitarian aid effort. Paul said in verse 20, Romans 15 and 20, so I have made it my aim to preach the gospel where Christ was, not where Christ was named, lest I should build on another man's foundation. So he purposely was taking his ministry into the parts unknown. We did that with the Direct Connect Humanitarian Aid because, some people ask me, and I guess that's one reason why I'm sharing it with you, well, why do you go overseas? We need help in America too. And I tell them one word, infrastructure. Infrastructure. As I mentioned, the big hurricanes hit in the south right now in Florida, because there's one behind this Irma one, another one, and there's already been one. I don't remember the name of it already. Forgot it. Harv, okay, he's already become and gone. Now, but our government responds to those kind of things. And even our government can be totally overwhelmed. And with all the charities that are trying to help, overwhelmed. That's how big these things are. Some countries get no help. Not from their government. Some of you might remember the time I brought back a thumb drive from Burma. They said, take this back and show it to the American people. And I told you, okay, we got to use a little bit of viewer discretion here. Don't bring the kids down here because of all the dead people, scattered children, people, no clothes on them, hanging in trees, dead water buffaloes, total devastation that remained like that for years. The Burmese government wouldn't let anyone, no foreigners in there to see that. Because they turned back all the humanitarian aid that showed up. Over 150,000 people were killed in Burma in that hurricane back a few years ago. I still have the pictures. They said, show the people. Because they wouldn't let any help come in. Because such a corrupt government, they didn't trust any foreigners coming into their land. So some of the brethren were down there, the Burmese Christians, and they got the pictures and gave them to me. 2 years later, they told me it was still like that. Infrastructure, at least this country and some of the other more, progressive Western-type countries have at least enough infrastructure to try to respond to some of the things. But we're no match. Human beings are no match to this kind of power. You know what the Bible says? Those things come from God's treasuries. These kind of things, he just has to open the window a little bit. There'll be a day when people will call, the Bible says they will call for the mountains to fall on them. and from the hills to cover them, to hide them from the face of the Lamb. I can't even imagine what that's going to look like. Our humanitarian aid effort, the model I said we took from the scripture, was to go in the world, and we got to we want to preach the gospel. The Great Commission is to go into all the world and preach the good news to everybody. He who believes it and is immersed will be saved. If they don't believe, be condemned. Well, you got to have a reason for being in other people's space. Jesus said, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all his holy angels with him, he'll sit on the throne of his glory. I'm in Matthew 25 and 31. All the nations will be gathered before him. He'll separate them one from another as a shepherd divides sheep from goats. He will set the sheep on his right hand, the goats on his left, and the king will say to those on the right, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, you took me in. I was naked, you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, you came to me. The righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, and thirsty give you drink? And when did we see you stranger and take you in, or naked or clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? The king will answer, Jesus said, and say, assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. Then to those on his left he'll say, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. You was raping and pillaging and plundering. No, I was hungry. You gave me no food. I was thirsty. You gave me no drink. I was a stranger, didn't take me in, naked, didn't clothe me, sick and in prison, didn't visit me. They'll answer him saying, Lord, when did we ever see you like that? He said, when you did it not. Wow. I see humanitarian aid. Basic needs of human beings. Hunger, thirsty, naked, homeless, prison. You see, we all have these things, basic needs human beings have all over the world. Jesus said, no, you're always going to have poor with you. You cannot eradicate that from the earth. It wasn't intended for you to eradicate it from the earth. It was intended for us to care. To care. That's all. You don't have to go all over the world to try to save all these people in a sense, or to make sure they all live, have nice homes, 2-car garages, and swimming pools. No. No, just a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple. Just show them you care. I tell you this story. Remember I told you before, I was over in Kosovo with Danya Jacobs and Nikki Morancic. They were registered nurses that went with me to go to Kosovo to Handicross, because Handicross, it deals with paralyzed people over there in Kosovo. They said, we got people dying of pressure sores, bed sores. Could you help us? I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. What do I know about pressure sores? I got me some nurses. They knew all about it. They said, we'll go put on a program for you. I said, okay. So we went. They put this whole thing together. It was great. They put on training for 2 days in a nice classroom. We had people in wheelchairs there, caregivers, nurses, medical people, whatever. Then they said, we want you to come to some homes. Okay, so we went to 3 different homes. Just so happened in the homes were females that were paralyzed. And this one lady that we went to, her name was Sadia. She was actually she could sit up. She was paralyzed from the waist down because she'd been shot by the Serbs during that war in Kosovo. They shot her in the back, so she's paralyzed. She had these sores. But the nurses looked at her and said, you're really doing pretty good with those. You just keep doing what you're doing. You got a handle on that there. And Sadia started thanking him for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Jamie was there. That's right. Jamie was with us too. And Denya goes, well, we really didn't do anything. And oh man, this woman lit right up. She goes, yes, you did. Yes, you did. You came halfway around the world to be here with me in my house. Nobody comes here. My government doesn't come here. Nobody helps me. But you came here. Yet they didn't do anything. She still was paralyzed, still had sores. Yet she felt they had made a big difference in coming to her house. You see, it's amazing what we can do when we don't do nothing, in a sense. Just being there. A lot of power associated with caring for someone else. It's not the amount that you do. You know, we've had this saying, I guess I grew up here, in America, it's not the gift, it's the intention, It's not so much what you do. Our humanitarian aid effort, we've been doing it now for 20 years, like I said, and we've made an impact in Belarus, Vietnam, Africa, Kosovo, Philippines, Myanmar, and I'm probably forgetting places already I don't even remember that we go to. And the idea is we need a reason for being there, and humanitarian aid gives us that reason to be in people's spaces, and we meet the best people in the world to do this with, because the Lord tells us, both Testaments, Old Testament, New Testament, visit the orphan and the widow in their affliction. Help the orphan and the widow. Why? Most vulnerable segments of the population. Orphans and widows. A lot of these countries, Belarus is one of them too, they can put all their money into their own militaries to make sure their presidents can stay in office. That's what Kim Jong-un's all about, and his dad and his dad. All the money that had been poor, that they have at all, only goes for the military. To what? Defend the country? No, to make sure he stays in power. That's what Saddam was all about. The Republican Guard, all of that was about keeping him in power. It's not to protect the people. Could care less about the people. But when we go, the most vulnerable people are the orphans in the orphanages, shelters, disabled people, old people. That's who we meet. That's who we go there for. It's always a very positive and good experience. And it's a benefit. It's not maybe just the orphan. When you help the orphan, get them a new pair of shoes, or some of the dresses that the ladies here make. Those dresses are a big hit for the little girls in these places we take them. Yes, the little child appreciates the dress or the new shoes or something like that. But guess who is crying? The staff in these orphanages that cannot give the children the things that they would love to give them. They don't have the means to do it. So when we show up and give it to them to give to the kids, man, it impacts them. And I've noticed through the years, one, it changed me. It impacted me. I know myself. I did it at first because I thought it was a practical thing to do. Then later I realized it made me an old softy. I was starting to cry watching girl movies that Sue likes to watch. I thought, what's happening to me? God changes us. He wants us to have a heart of compassion. He said, I'm going to remove that stony heart of yours and give you a heart of flesh. And the new creation. That's what he intends to do. And he's good at it. I had the opportunity to take two young ladies with me, Savannah McGraw. That's Jeff and Shelley's daughter. You guys know the McGraws from Lancaster, Ohio. Savannah, I think she's 19, and I took Amelia Yates. Amelia is from Spokane, Washington. She is like 17. Savannah wanted to go because she started this nonprofit called Can't Be Bought. Some of you might know. It's to help fight human trafficking. A lot of people in America don't realize there's a huge global problem with human trafficking. And it's bad. And America has got it too. It's just not good. It's bad. The slavery, you know what I'm talking about. Savannah's raised a lot of money. She has these little bracelets that she makes. I think she sells them for $2, and she's raised like close to $7,000. That's a lot of bracelets. She gave it to me, the money to me, said, I don't really know anybody that's fighting this problem, but I am dealing with two ladies in Belarus that are involved with the fight against human trafficking. One is Lena Tushka, one is Olga Goncharenko. So I've been passing that money on to them. Well, Savannah wanted to go, and she wanted to meet these ladies, and she could go in the summer because she was off school. She goes to Free Hardman University. Anyway, she went with me, and Amelia saw one of my presentations, and she wanted to just do something, so she got a chance to go. And it was a big impact on the young ladies. Before that, I had Jessica and Alexandra Elam from southern Indiana went to Kosovo. Same thing. Big impact on the young people. Now, we met in Detroit. Well, I guess Amelia went with Sue and I. She came and spent the night at my house the night before because she came from Spokane, Washington. Met Savannah. We flew to Frankfurt, landed in Minsk the next day in Belarus, and we began. And I had a study I had to do right away. Some of you guys know about that because I told you about it. Back when I was in Belarus in March, there was a young lady who wanted to interview me for the humanitarian aid effort. She was Belarusian. She's a freelance writer. She wanted to know about our work, about the humanitarian work in Belarus. So me and Ellen Marshall met with her, and I was starting to tell her about it. But she kept asking me, yeah, but why do you do it? And so I gave her a canned answer. Well, it's the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but why do you do it? I'm thinking, okay, I don't know exactly how much plainer I could make that. And finally I said, well, look, we have a mandate from the Lord, that we need to be Christ to this generation. We need to help the people. What Jesus could do miraculously, could open blind eyes, deaf ears, lame could walk, dead were raised, the unclean, the people had demons cast out of them, and the poor had the gospel preached to them. And I told her that, what he could do in that miraculous sense, we do the old-fashioned way because people still need that hope, that help, and that's what we're here to do. And she said, I want to believe that so bad. I want to believe that, she said, so bad. Anastasia was her name. And I said, but she couldn't. She said, I can't. Because of the darkness in this world, because of the suffering. She said, I can't believe God is even there. And for people that are atheists, here in this country or anywhere else, that's one of their arguments. Because of the bad things like we described, wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes, pestilence in various places and all this stuff, how could there be God who's so good and he just sits up there and lets all this stuff happen? So I told Anastasia, I said, you are right. You are exactly right. What you're seeing is accurate. But I said, it ain't the whole story. It ain't the whole picture. I said, I could explain it. I can show you. I said, I think if you'd see it, you'd say that makes sense. But we didn't have any time back in March because me and Alan were leaving the next day. He was going home. I was going to Kosovo. I said, look, I'm coming back in August. So that study was number one priority for me the day after we got there. She came to the flat. And I had her, and the girls went with Anya Masoy. You guys know Anya. She came here one time from Belarus. She took the girls. And I studied with Anastasia for 2.5 hours. Had her set right beside me because I got a bold print Bible and I got all my squiggles and all my arrows in both Testaments. So you can see I get into it once in a while. And I wanted her, she reads perfect English, no problem with the English. Because she had an old Russian Bible and then she had some kids' Bible, an illustrated kids' Bible. I thought, we ain't studying through that. Nothing against the kids here, but age appropriate. She's, I don't know, almost 30 years old. We studied for 2.5 hours. And I got to admit, we went over a lot of information. A lot of it, she was thrilled when she saw it, and some of it scared her. I'll admit it, it scared her. Because, see, I was showing her all the good stuff, and she said, well, but the Bible, the real Bible that I have, the Russian one, my mom showed me, like, all this wrath of God. I said, well, there is wrath in there. I was not necessarily going to focus on that. I said, you want to see some wrath? I can show you some wrath stuff if you want to see it. So I showed her some wrath, and then I saw the fear in her eyes. I said, Anastasia, look at who he's going to wrath on. Ain't people searching for truth. It's people in open rebellion against God, rejecting him. Yes, God is good, God is kind, God is patient, God is love, God is mercy. But God said, I'm also a jealous God. And I can be provoked to wrath, to anger. I said, so don't do it. Don't do it. But too much information. Now, I could see the fear in her eyes. She said, I'll never make it. I'll never make it. I said, Anastasia, don't say that. Don't even say that. But I couldn't get that out of her eyes. She said, well, I probably have to go. And I could see she wanted to go. And I said, Anastasia, don't be afraid. Thank you for taking time with me, but and she went out the door. And I thought, but then I thought, you know what? I think she's really looking for truth. I said, I think she'll think about it. I could pull up my phone right now and show you the message she sent me that night. She said, after I thought about, everything you shared, thank you so much, she put in capital letters, for spending the time with me. And I apologize, she said, for the way that I left. Like fleeing out the door. She thought about it, she said. I got a chance to really think about it. But the thing was, too, she got a chance to see it was not me that scared her, okay? She wasn't offended, I don't think, by me personally. But she couldn't help, because obviously the girl's been looking. Really looking. And obviously she had some things wrong in her own head, because, how are you going to know the truth by just, there's a way that seems right to a man, the Bible says, but then are the ways of death. You can't figure this stuff out all by yourself. And a lot of people have pacified themselves into thinking everything is just fine. Then all of a sudden they see in the Bible, maybe it ain't all fine. It's like, uh-oh. But look, rather than run from it, figure it out. Come on. Get closer. Get closer. There are certain realities. Look at them hurricanes. Those things are not just going to disappear. They're going to run their course. And if you're in the way of that thing, you better figure out what you're going to do. What you should have did is get out of there when the time comes. If you hear the word of God, you're supposed to respond. God's not trying to kill you. He's trying to save you. But to stand there and mock him, and right up until the last minute, that I don't recommend you do. Okay, so my hope is that I will be back with Anastasia again. I'll let her know I'm coming on October 18th. Elvira, another lady, she wasn't here, but she was in Montana. We've known Elvira for a long time. But she said basically the same thing. That she would tell me, well, my mother would say, because, see, her mom went through so much hardship, her and her granny, that's how they referred to him, as their granny, if they speak English, it's granny, went through very, very tough times in Russia. Unbelievable tough times. And her mother, she said, lost her faith. Don't believe there's any God anymore because of the suffering. Exactly the same thing Anastasia was saying. But when I opened up the scriptures to Elvira, because I told her the same thing, I said, you're exactly right. Everything you just told me about your granny and about your mom and the alcoholic husbands and the abuse and the hunger to where they were splitting a cookie for their food one day. And then her mother went to the neighbors to get a cookie to come home and split it with her mother. Tough, tough times with nothing. I said, you're absolutely right. I said, the Bible's the one that tells you that. It's the Bible that tells you about all that darkness and all that suffering and all that pain and all that woe and all that hopelessness. It's in the Bible. God tells you that. But the Bible also talks about the hope and about the light and about the truth. So we can have joy and peace and believing and abounding in hope by the power of the Holy Spirit, Paul says. When I started unpackaging scriptures for her, 2.5 hours in a restaurant in downtown Minsk, and her face lit right up. Her face lit right up. Charlie told me, he said, she wants us to come down and meet her mom in where she lives near Gomel. So that's on the schedule. There was a 3-day camp scheduled too. This was something Olga, now some of you know Olga, she was here doing a presentation. Remember Olga Goncharenko was going in these orphanages because she just wanted to love, she said, on the little kids. And she was doing that 2-3 times a week for some years. And those little kids became big kids. Those 7-10-year-old girls became 13-year-old girls and then 16-year-old girls, and looking at the door, because they'll put them out of them orphanages right on the street, and those kids are clueless and totally socially clueless. Olga stood right up here and said, you know, those kids get out of them orphanages and they don't even know how to make a cup of tea. And Olga says, you know how to make a cup of tea, don't you? You heat up the water and put a tea bag in it. Because in those orphanages, the children aren't allowed in the kitchens. The staff run those things. They're not prepared. And the predators wait out there, the sex traffickers, knowing these kids are clueless, and some of them, you know, they don't even really have a last name, if you get my drift. Their parents, they've been, some of them in them orphanages since they were born. And the traffickers know it. They're waiting for them. And sometimes, in some orphanages, the directors are in cahoots with the traffickers. They let them know when they got some coming available and hand them right off to them. So Olga realized some of those young girls are going to get put out, and she's like, She don't have a lot of money, her and her husband, Jakob. But they went and rented a flat, and they put 4 of these girls in there. It's kind of how it started, I guess, is how she explained it here. They needed to get another flat. Start her own little charity called Spring of Revival, trying to find a place for these kids to be so she could mentor them and teach them how to take care of a place and how to get a part-time job, go to school. She's mentoring. And I told Olga, we need to, because John and I were social orphans. Maybe some of you were as well. I can't think of anyone else right off the top of my head. 80% of the orphans in the world are social orphans, meaning they got a mom or a dad somewhere. Maybe in jail or prison or whatever. Drug addict, drunk, something. That was our case. Mother dead, father hated us, got in trouble, locked us up. Teenagers, a couple years, got adopted. Both struggled with alcohol. But we were social orphans. I relate to those kids. And they know it. They know my story. I told Olga, we got to do more for your young people that you're mentoring here. We got to help them. They're 19. They're 20. They're so vulnerable. I said, when we come over, we can't spend that kind of time just coming to the flat. We need to, let's go to camp. We'll have a camp. They'll have some fun. Alan Marshall will come. We'll have some music. And then we need to talk about big picture stuff. And I was opening up scriptures to Olga. She said, I want you to do that for my orphans. So took Savannah, took Amelia, and we connected with Bill Compton's team, who also came from Eugene, Oregon. He brought young people with him. And we were with Olga's orphans for 3 days. And they had a blast. And I got a chance to open up big picture stuff to help prepare the young people for what this crazy world is all about and how they can overcome, because they already started at a disadvantage being in the orphanage most of their lives. And they really appreciated it. So that was one of our objectives, and we were able to accomplish that. Had studies with Nikolai, Nina, with the church in Minsk, Vieira, one of the ladies in the church, it's been a real effective person, really loves the Bible study. Actually I invited her, she got a visa. She'll be here sometime, don't know when. It maybe not be till springtime or something. Vieira, the Red Cross lady from Dzerzhinsk in Belarus, who was here, came here with Yulia, some of you know her. Now, she really enjoys the Bible studies, the old Red Cross lady, Vera. Plus, she helps poor people because she's a Red Cross lady. And she gets into all these situations, and she takes us to some of these situations. We went into one home where the family was extremely poor, and the husband had just died of liver cancer. There was no running water in this place. The woman had 4 kids, and they had nothing. And the little boy was walking around begging his mom. He kept holding his pants up. He said, "Mom, I need a belt." Now, I didn't know what he was saying. Oleg had to translate. He says he needs a belt. His pants keep falling down. He doesn't have a belt. And the girls were dressed basically in rags. And I thought, we got something for them little girls. Ladies, those dresses you make, we let them each get 2 dresses. I got the pictures. But I didn't want to give them girls some dresses until I got something for the little boys, because she had 2 boys and I didn't have nothing for boys. So I told Viera, I said, "Look, I'm going to give you some money, and what I want you to do is get a truck or something, or a machine gun or something for the little boy." Not really. I was thinking boy stuff, I would have wanted a machine gun to shoot my sister with. Squirt gun, or shoot tennis balls at her or something. That would have been a blast. So Vera said she'd do it. So she got, a couple toys for the boys and a belt. And I could show you the pictures. This little boy was getting this picture taken with his shirt pulled up, showing his belt. And the girls got dresses. But one of the problems was their power. They had no power in the house because the Belarusian government shut it off because they hadn't paid their power bill because they spent the money on trying to save the husband who died of the cancer. And they had some money given to them by other people, but they lacked a couple $100. So I gave Vera, the Red Cross lady, the $200 to turn the power on. And what I'm talking about here is basic needs for people that are hurting, that are suffering. Basic, the electrical, or, getting clean water, or dresses for little girls. Just small things can make all the difference in the world to the people that are receiving that help. And Vera had organized another study with 18 people at a house there at Oksana's house in Belarus. 18 people. Because that's what it's all about. We want to not only meet a basic need, human need, but there's a spiritual thing. That's what Jesus did. He fed the people. We mentioned that, I guess, earlier with feeding the 5,000. But that was not his intention to show up every day and open up the soup kitchen. The real need that people have, he said, "If a man believe in me, he'll never hunger, never thirst again." Now, you imagine what them Jews thought when he said that. They're probably thinking, "What are you talking about, Willis? I ate this morning. I'm hungry now. We're going to have a potluck. And then even then, I'll probably snack later tonight. And if a man believe in me, he will never hunger, never thirst." You see, we need to understand what he's saying. What he's saying. Because Jesus don't just exaggerate. He doesn't speak in hyperbole. He doesn't make just these wild statements. Remember what Jesus said about faith? If he had faith, even as a grain of mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, "Be removed, cast into the sea," and it would obey you. They got big mountains over there. And I've been to the place where he was at when he said that. And if he was pointing at one of them mountains and saying faith as small as a grain of mustard seed could move that, they would have thought, "Man, what's he talking about?" They wouldn't have known what a nuke is. We got nukes. A nuke couldn't blow one of them mountains out of the socket and move it. That's why NORAD is inside Cheyenne Mountain. So if the Soviets ever shot a bunch of nukes over here, at least our command and control would still be operating because it's deep in the heart of Cheyenne Mountain. Yeah, Jesus said this thing called faith could move one of those. Right. Again, he isn't given to exaggerations and wild, nutty statements. So what is he talking about? We got mountains, all right. Everybody, a mountain is an obstacle right in your way. So high you can't get over it, and so wide you can't get around it. And the song and the jingle, you got to go through that door. Well, Jesus is the door. to the sheepfold. He said, a man may enter in and find life. Jesus has a way of removing the mountains, the obstacles in our lives, so we can have quality of life. Not physical things, but spiritual blessings in heavenly places, which many times translates into physical blessings. The quality of my life went way up the day I quit drinking a case a day. Trust me. I had more money in my pocket, and I didn't feel like I had the flu every morning. Like 5 miles of bad road, with one of them dark brown headaches and my stomach feeling like a bag of doorknobs. The quality of my life greatly improved when I quit my dysfunctional behavior. So it can translate into physical blessings. Olga took us to Mama Nina's, and I'll tell you what, I've said it before, if you want a big smooch from a woman you've never seen before in your life, you walk in the door at Mama Nina's, man, everybody gets the same welcome. That woman is a real incredible woman. She's got all these foster kids in a very poor home that the government actually gave her, but she can't afford. She has her own little garden, and we bought her a cow. She has a cow. She has a pig. She does what she can, all by with just love. She's got foster kids in there that they said nobody else could keep. The government said they'd put them in a home, they'd send them back. Well, then they take them to Mama Nina, and they thrive there for some reason. She's just a great lady. And so Olga asked her, we gave her about $400 for school clothes. Clothes are expensive over in Belarus. They're more expensive than they are here. And yet you have to have these uniforms to go to school. And if you don't, you can have kids taken away from you. So we gave her the money to buy school clothes for the kids. And Olga flat out asked her about having Bible studies there next time we come. Mama Nina says, absolutely. So you're going to open her house up for Bible studies the next time we're at her place. So we helped another poor family get a stove, some bunk beds. We met with Sasha Chernitsky. He runs a soup kitchen there. Sasha's been here a couple times through the years. He's the artist that paints these beautiful pictures, but he also opens up a soup kitchen to help feed homeless people. It used to be just kids, but then the government finally got the street urchins. Minsk had thousands of them. St. Petersburg had 30,000 street children. We're talking little kids. Kids this big being led around by 10-year-olds was their gang leaders. They're just small children. And the government's finally got the street kids up. They still have homeless. And anyway, so Sasha's still doing that. But he says these crazy laws they pass over there. When I was there last March, there was big demonstrations in the street. They locked up about 800 people because Lukashenko passed some parasite law. The poor people, because they weren't working, he fined them $200. They're like, we don't have any jobs. Whose fault is that? So he passed this parasite law, so the people hit the streets. He locked up a whole bunch of them. Sasha said now, if your home is dilapidated and your wallpaper's falling off, you got like 30 days to fix that, or they come in and take your kids. What kind of crazy thing is that? They don't have anything. How are they supposed to fix it? So, anyway, we were able to do studies, do some humanitarian aid, further our contact base, and we're really looking forward to returning October 18th. It'll be me, Alan Marshall, Anya from Ukraine. We were in Ukraine last fall. And Anya took us around and showed us the work she was doing. The Ukraine is in bad shape. Everyone's worried about the war. Everyone tells us America is not getting the whole story on the war. There's bodies in the streets. Things are bad. In the particular area we were at, there was no fighting. It was more to the west of us. I think we're more in the middle in Kremenchuk in Ukraine. Well, anyway, Anya is going to come from Ukraine to be with us in Belarus to see how we do this in Belarus, and we'll do that same thing with her in Ukraine. So Anya will be there, and Jeff and Chantal Bisco from Billings, Montana, they will be arriving there at the same time. As I said, I left on the 18th and headed for Kosovo. some of you know Fiola, Duraco, Blarum, Ilir, they were all here because of a wheelchair project in Kosovo. Rock Wheels, ROC, Reach Out and Care. It's a wheelchair company in Billings or Bozeman, Montana. Wayne Hansen, the founder, director of that, and I had planned that wheelchair project. We went there in last September, took the wheelchairs, and they're looking into building wheelchairs there. But in my relationship with Wayne Hansen, he's a believer, talks about the Lord, so I talk about the Lord, open up scriptures, and he likes what I say, because sometimes when I'm talking, Wayne says, wait a minute, rips his phone off, says, say that again. So I'll say it again, whatever it was. I'll be going along, and I'll say something. Wayne says, just a second, say that again. So I was just there last week in Montana, and I met Wayne for breakfast, and I was doing the same thing because he knew I just came from Kosovo, and he was wanting to know how everybody was doing, and then he pulls his phone, I'll say that again. So he wants me to come out there. I had to break the news to Bro John. I'm going back to Montana on Friday. Well, he wants me to talk to his staff at Rock Wheels. And I said, about our project over there? And he said, I said, or do you want me to wrap scriptures around it? He said, I want you to wrap scriptures around it. And I'm like, okay. So I'm going to meet with Wayne and the staff at Rock Wheels at a dinner meeting. And Lord willing, be able to share with them some things. So hopefully it'll be very encouraging. Because they do a tremendous work at Rock Wheels and making these great wheelchairs for severely disabled kids. And I went to 3 of the homes when I was in Kosovo. I went to the home of Blarina. She's got muscular dystrophy. And that sweet little girl, I'm afraid, is going to die. She's like 10 years old. And when her dad picks her up, her body just hangs, just limp and straight. But boy, she still keeps a smile on her face. But you can tell even trying to move her face to make that smile is now work for her. So she's really going downhill fast. And she is just a sweetheart. But the parents are so thankful that somebody cared enough to come over and to help them with their little girl. There's a little boy, I think it's Vasily. His father's name is Abni. He's got spinal bifida. I went to that house, and I mean, they just were trying to get me to stay. They wanted to fix a big meal for me, and I'm telling them, no. He said, when you come back, please come to our house, and we want you to come for dinner. And so, I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And I met with Antoinetta, who has the little boy with the smooth brain. He's just a sweet little boy, 4 years old, but he just kind of looks around. He can't walk or talk or do anything, but because of the wheelchair that Wayne builds and the way that it tilts way back, so he doesn't sit like this, he can be back, he can see the lights. His mother is just thrilled, and she speaks good English, so I spent 2.5 hours in Bible discussion with Antoinetta. Now, this is a snapshot. I met with Abni. As you guys know, we immersed him here in May. He spent 9 months here at Northern Ohio University. He's from Kosovo. He's the one, he spoke, obviously. Everybody heard his story. He was tortured, starved, beaten by the Serbs with wrought iron or steel rods until they broke his back, broke his knees. And that guy, I'm telling you what, he was tracking with the scriptures. He said, Stevie, he calls me Stevie, I want to be immersed before I go back to Kosovo. So into the tank he went. So I met with Abni. We studied 2 different times there. Plus I got a chance to meet his mom. And we had dinner with his mom and his 2 sons. And he's studying with his boy, the older boy, Florin. Florin wants to know the truth. So Abni's working through Jay's books with Abni, or with his son Florin. So in other words, kind of a mixture, sharing with you, we're taking Christ where he had not been preached. Kosovo is a Muslim country. The only Muslim country I know of that loves Americans. They're moderates. So they're not out of their minds. They're not wearing bomb vests or anything over there. Easy. They like the Americans. And we're just trying to take Christ straight into there because God is the one that does work. The darkness in this world is great. The suffering is incredible, and that is not going to stop. So, God don't change the world, he changed the people. We can, as John says, we can overcome this world. The victory that we have, he said, is our faith. Because our faith can move the mountains in our own lives. The truth, Jesus said, can set you free. And they said, free from what? You know, we're Abraham's deceived, never been in bondage. How is it you say we'll be made free? He said, it'll free you from your old nature, from your old man. There's your problem. Our problem isn't the crazies in this world or anybody else for that matter. We've met the enemy. The enemy is us. We're our own worst enemy. And the truth of God can set us free. And this message, I tell people all the time, it's amazing how this message is received, because the message is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believed, to the Jew first and also to the Gentile, Paul said. This message came into the world 2,000 years ago, and this is not Western, this is Eastern. This message is from Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, and the Vietnamese can hear it, the Burmese can hear it, the Africans can hear it, the Russians can hear it. And anybody, human beings, can hear this message. I do not have to change anything when I'm preaching in those countries. Figuring out, okay, well, I want to preach to them about this, but how am I going to communicate this to them? All you need is a good interpreter, and let it go, man, because this message, it's like it's a miracle or something. Doesn't need anything. This message can be preached right from face value. I mean, what's written, without any modifications, to all these different cultures, and the people get it. I told you, humor don't translate sometimes. I don't laugh at their dumb jokes, and they don't laugh at mine. The humor don't translate, but the message itself, no problem. And it needs to be preached, yet in all the world. So that's just a snapshot and an update on everything. Good to be back. So good to see all of you. And I'm looking forward to the potluck, that's for sure.